They laughed when she walked out of the room. They whispered her name like it was a warning, not a promise. She was underestimated, ignored, and quietly dismissed by people who thought confidence was something you were born with. What they never realized was that silence was never a weakness. It was preparation. This is not a story about luck. This is not a story about talent handed over for free. This is the story of a woman who was broken publicly and rebuilt herself privately. A woman who turned rejection into discipline, fear into fuel, and humiliation into unstoppable confidence. If you have ever been doubted, underestimated, or betrayed, then stay with this story. Because Emily Carter did not come back to explain herself. She came back to win. Emily Carter grew up in a small town outside Chicago, where dreams felt bigger than the streets and confidence felt like something other people owned. From a young age, she was observant, quiet, and constantly aware of how people judged each other. In school, she was never the loudest voice or the most popular face. Teachers saw her as average. Classmates barely noticed her. Even friends often spoke over her as if her thoughts did not matter. Emily learned early that being invisible was safer than being rejected. She carried that lesson with her for years, even when it slowly started to hurt. Her home life was simple and stable, but not inspiring. Her parents worked hard and believed survival mattered more than ambition. They loved her, but they did not understand her hunger to become more. When Emily spoke about dreams of success, independence, and confidence, she was often met with silence or polite smiles. Nobody told her she could not do it. But nobody told her she could either. That quiet doubt settled deep inside her and shaped the way she saw herself. College was supposed to be her escape. A new city, new people, and a chance to finally reinvent herself. She moved to New York with hope in her heart and fear in her chest. The city was loud, fast, and unforgiving. Everywhere she looked, there were confident women who walked like they owned the sidewalk. Emily compared herself constantly. She questioned her voice, her appearance, and her worth. Still, she worked hard. She studied business and marketing and dreamed of one day leading something meaningful. Then came the moment that changed everything. During her final year, she joined a competitive internship program at a media company. It was full of ambitious young professionals who spoke confidently and sold themselves effortlessly. Emily tried to fit in, but her quiet nature was mistaken for weakness. In meetings, her ideas were ignored until repeated by someone else. Her supervisor praised others publicly and corrected Emily privately. She worked longer hours than anyone else, yet received the least recognition. One evening, after a long presentation, she overheard a conversation that shattered her. Two coworkers laughed and spoke about her in a way they assumed she would never hear. They said she was forgettable. They said she had no presence. They said she would never lead anything because people like her were meant to follow. Emily stood frozen in the hallway as every word burned into her memory. She smiled politely when they noticed her and went home in silence. That night she cried not because of what they said, but because part of her believed them. The next few weeks were worse. Her supervisor called her into the office and told her she was not a good fit for the company culture. He said she lacked confidence. He said clients would not trust her. He ended the meeting by advising her to find a role that suited her personality better. Emily walked out with her head down and her future uncertain. She felt humiliated. She felt small. She felt invisible again. But something shifted inside her during those long, quiet nights that followed. The pain did not disappear. It sharpened. Instead of asking why she was not enough, she began asking how she could become undeniable. She stopped waiting for validation. She stopped hoping someone would notice her potential. She made a decision that nobody else needed to believe in her as long as she did. Emily started with discipline. Every morning she woke up earlier than before. She exercised not to look impressive but to feel strong. She read books on confidence psychology, communication, and leadership. She practiced speaking out loud alone in her apartment. She recorded herself talking, watched it back, and corrected her posture, tone, and presence. It was uncomfortable. It was painful. But it was honest. She took rejection personally, but not emotionally. Each failure became data. Each criticism became a lesson. She learned that confidence was not loudness. It was clear. It was knowing your value before anyone else confirmed it. She stopped trying to fit in and started building herself. Months passed, and Emily changed in ways that were invisible to others, but powerful to her. She carried herself differently. She walked slower. She spoke with intention. She applied for jobs not hoping to be chosen, but knowing she was capable. She faced interviews with calm focus, not desperation. Then came the opportunity that would test everything she had rebuilt. A startup company was looking for a marketing strategist. It was risky, fast, moving, and demanding. During the interview, Emily spoke with honesty and strength. She did not pretend to be fearless. She showed preparation, vision, and self-respect. The founders noticed something different. They saw depth. They saw resilience. They offered her the job. Emily accepted, knowing this was not revenge yet. This was preparation. Every late night, every challenge, every obstacle she faced, she welcomed. She delivered results quietly and consistently. She built trust through action, not noise. Slowly, her influence grew. Her ideas shaped decisions. Her confidence became visible, not forced. And deep down, she remembered every laugh, every doubt, every dismissal. Not with anger, with focus. Emily Carter did not change overnight. What changed was her tolerance for being underestimated. At the startup, she watched carefully. She listened more than she spoke. She learned how power moved through rooms without raising its voice. While others chased attention, Emily focused on mastery. She studied customer behavior late into the night. She analyzed campaigns that failed and those that quietly dominated. She built systems instead of seeking praise. At first, her coworkers still underestimated her. They saw her as reliable but not dominant, useful but not threatening. Emily let them believe that. She understood that surprise was a form of power. Every time someone interrupted her, she waited. Every time someone took credit, she documented results. She learned that revenge did not require confrontation. It required success so undeniable that silence became impossible. One afternoon, the company faced a crisis. A major campaign collapsed days before launch. Investors were angry and pressure filled the office like heavy air. People spoke loudly and blamed each other. Emily watched quietly, then stepped forward with a solution she had prepared weeks earlier just in case something like this happened. Her plan was clear, detailed, and realistic. The room went silent. For the first time, people listened fully. The campaign launched within 48 hours and exceeded expectations. Revenue increased, engagement surged, and the same people who once overlooked her now repeated her name with respect. Emily did not celebrate. She noted the shift. This was the moment she understood something important. Confidence multiplied when backed by results. Her manager began inviting her into high-level meetings. Executives asked for her opinion. New hires were told to learn from her. Emily remained calm and composed. She never reminded anyone of the past. She did not need to. Her presence spoke for her. Outside of work, her transformation continued. She changed the way she dressed, not to impress, but to align with who she had become. She invested in her body, her mind, and her boundaries. She stopped explaining herself to people who never listened before. Friends who once dismissed her now asked for advice. She helped them kindly without shrinking herself. Then life tested her again. One evening, she received a message from someone she never expected to hear from again. It was her former supervisor from the media company. The same man who said she lacked confidence. The same place where she was laughed at and quietly rejected. He had seen her work featured in an industry article. He congratulated her and asked if she would be interested in consulting for his team. Emily stared at the screen for a long time. The old version of her would have ignored the message or responded emotionally. The new version responded with professionalism and control. She agreed to a meeting. Not for revenge driven by anger, but for closure driven by power. Walking into that office again felt surreal. The walls looked smaller. The energy felt weaker. People who once dismissed her now smiled nervously. Her former supervisor spoke carefully, choosing words like respect and growth. Emily listened. She spoke calmly and confidently. She outlined her terms, her values, and her expectations. Her rate was higher than anyone else in the room. They agreed. Emily walked out without satisfaction or resentment. Just clarity. She did not need their approval anymore. She had surpassed the moment that once broke her. That night she reflected on her journey. Revenge had never been about proving them wrong. It was about proving herself right. About becoming the woman she once wished someone would defend. She realized confidence was built when you stopped waiting for permission to exist fully. Her influence continued to grow. She mentored younger women who reminded her of herself. Quite talented and overlooked. She taught them discipline over validation, preparation over performance, self-belief over applause. Emily Carter became known not as the loudest voice, but as the strongest presence. When she spoke, people leaned in. When she walked into the room, energy shifted. Not because she demanded attention, but because she earned respect. And the people who once doubted her watched from a distance, trying to understand how someone they ignored became someone they followed. They never saw the nights she trained alone, the tears she swallowed, the fear she faced daily. Success did not make Emily Carter softer. It made her sharper. As her reputation expanded beyond the startup world, she began receiving invitations to speak, consult, and collaborate. Rooms that once intimidated her now felt familiar. She did not rush into opportunities. She chose carefully. Every decision was aligned with the woman she had built herself into. But growth always attracts resistance. As Emily's influence grew, so did quiet jealousy. Some colleagues questioned her methods. Others whispered that she was lucky. A few tried to undermine her authority by testing her patience in meetings. Emily noticed everything. She responded with calm precision. She let the results speak. She never defended herself emotionally. She understood that when people feel threatened, they reveal their own insecurities. One situation pushed her limits. A senior executive joined the company and attempted to dominate every conversation. He interrupted her openly and dismissed her contributions. The old wound resurfaced. Not pain, but memory. Emily felt the familiar pressure of being underestimated. This time she did not shrink, she prepared. She gathered data, insights, and projections. In the next executive meeting, she spoke clearly and firmly. She did not raise her voice. She did not apologize. She presented facts, strategies, and outcomes that directly countered his assumptions. The room shifted. Questions were directed at her. Decisions followed her recommendations. The executive leaned back in silence. After the meeting, he approached her privately. His tone had changed. He acknowledged her expertise. Emily nodded and moved on. She did not need validation. She had an established presence. At the same time, her personal life was evolving. Emily no longer chased approval in relationships. She set boundaries and walked away from people who drained her confidence. She chose solitude over disrespect. She learned that being alone was not loneliness. It was self-respect. One evening, while attending an industry event, she ran into an old college acquaintance. Someone who once joked about her quiet nature and predicted she would disappear into a safe, ordinary job. His expression changed when he heard her name announced on stage. When she returned from speaking, he congratulated her awkwardly and said he always believed in her. Emily smiled politely. She did not correct him. She did not need to. Her growth was not for his understanding. Inside, she felt something new. Not anger. Not pride. Peace. She realized that revenge had transformed into freedom. She no longer carried the weight of past opinions. They had lost power the moment she stopped measuring herself through them. Confidence now lived inside her, independent of applause or criticism. Emily began writing. Not publicly at first. She wrote about fear, discipline, rejection, and rebuilding. She wrote for women who felt invisible, for those told they lacked presence. Her words resonated. When she eventually shared them, the response was overwhelming. Messages poured in from women across the country. They saw themselves in her story. She understood then that her journey was bigger than her. With every step forward, she refined her identity. She was no longer reacting to the past. She was creating the future. She launched her own consulting brand focusing on confidence, strategy, leadership presence, and mindset. Clients came not because she sold loudly, but because her results were undeniable. The girl who once avoided speaking now coached executives on communication. The woman once dismissed as forgettable now taught others how to be unforgettable. And yet Emily remained grounded. She remembered the nights of doubt, the silence after rejection. She honored that version of herself by never betraying her values. She worked with integrity, discipline, and humility. The industry began to recognize her name. Articles featured her work. Panels invited her voice. Younger women watched her not as a symbol of perfection, but as proof of possibility. Emily Carter had become confident not because she conquered others, but because she conquered herself. And somewhere far behind her the echoes of laughter and doubt faded into irrelevance. She was no longer running from who she was. By the time Emily Carter reached her mid-30s, her name carried weight. Not celebrity noise, but quiet authority. People trusted her judgment before she spoke. Companies adjusted strategies after hearing her perspective. She had become someone others listened to not because she demanded space, but because she owned it. Yet the greatest test of her confidence arrived when she least expected it. A national conference invited her as a keynote speaker. The topic was leadership presence and inner authority. The audience would include executives, investors, and media figures from across the country. When Emily received the invitation, she felt the familiar tightening in her chest. The old voice whispered reminders of rejection and laughter. She paused. Then she accepted. Preparation became her ritual. She did not rehearse to impress. She rehearsed to connect. She revisited her journey not to relive pain but to extract truth. She refined her message around discipline, resilience, and self-belief. She knew this moment was not about revenge. It was about impact. The night before the event, she slept lightly. Memories surfaced. Hallways where she once stood invisible. Meetings where her ideas were ignored. She welcomed the memories. They no longer controlled her. They fueled her clarity. When Emily stepped onto the stage, the room fell quiet. She stood tall, grounded, and composed. Her voice was calm and steady. She spoke about confidence not as charisma but as alignment. She spoke about success not as applause but as self-trust. She spoke about revenge not as destruction but as growth so undeniable that the past loses relevance. The audience leaned in. Some nodded. Some wiped tears. Many recognized themselves in her words. Emily did not perform. She shared the truth. The applause at the end was long and genuine. But what mattered more were the conversations that followed. People thanked her for articulating what they had felt but never named. Among the crowd stood someone she had not seen in years. One of the coworkers who laughed about her in that hallway long ago. Their eyes met briefly. There was recognition and discomfort. Emily held her gaze calmly and smiled. Not out of superiority but closure. That moment was her quiet victory. After the conference, opportunities multiplied. The media interviews book offers partnerships. Emily chose selectively. She protected her peace fiercely. She knew confidence could be lost if borrowed from external praise. She stayed anchored in her routine, her discipline, and her values. She launched initiatives to mentor women from overlooked backgrounds. She invested in programs that built confidence early, not late. She used her influence responsibly, knowing the cost of the journey she had walked. At home, she remained simple. She valued solitude, reflection, and growth. She measured success by how aligned she felt with her purpose, not by numbers or titles. Emily understood now that revenge was never about returning pain. It was about refusing to let pain define the ending. It was about becoming so rooted in self-belief that no external opinion could shake you. The world saw her as confident, successful, and powerful. Few understood the discipline behind it. The self-doubt she confronted daily. The courage it took to choose growth when bitterness would have been easier. Emily Carter no longer introduced herself with hesitation. She no longer waited for rooms to approve her presence. By the time she reached the height of her influence, she understood something that once felt impossible. Confidence was not something she found. It was something she built layer by layer through discipline, pain, and choice. Her story had traveled farther than she ever imagined. Women across the country reached out sharing how her words changed the way they saw themselves. Not because she promised easy success, but because she told the truth. That confidence was earned in private long before it was seen in public. That revenge was not loud. It was silent consistency. Emily often reflected on the girl she used to be. The one who stood quietly in corners. The one who doubted her voice. The one who believed being unseen was safer than being rejected. She did not feel shame for that girl. She felt gratitude. Without her there would be no strength. No clarity. No purpose. One evening during a private mentoring session, a young woman asked her what finally changed everything. Emily paused. Then she answered honestly. She said the moment she stopped trying to be chosen and decided to choose herself was the moment her life began to shift. She said confidence arrived when she stopped begging the world for permission to matter. Emily built a life where she no longer feared rejection. She welcomed it, because she knew rejection was not a verdict. It was a redirect. She had learned that people will doubt what they cannot control. They will laugh at what they do not understand. And they will respect what they cannot break. Her former critics watched from afar. Some admired her quietly. Others rationalized her success as luck. Emily did not correct them. Their opinions no longer lived in her body. She had released them. The real revenge was visible in her peace, in her calm, in her unshakable self-trust. She did not need to dominate conversations. She influenced outcomes. She did not need to prove herself. Her work did it for her. Emily Carter became a woman who walked with certainty, not arrogance. Strength, not hardness. Confidence, not noise. She built success that felt aligned, not forced. She lived fully without shrinking to make others comfortable. Her journey proved one truth clearly. You do not rise by becoming louder than those who doubted you. You rise by becoming so grounded in who you are that their doubt no longer reaches you. And that is the kind of success that lasts. If you are watching this and you feel unseen, unheard, or underestimated, remember this. Your silence can be preparation. Your pain can be training. And your revenge can be a life so strong, so confident, and so fulfilled that the past loses all power over you.